The Capital Confidential podcast is brought to you by the Times-Union, the leading newspaper in New York's capital region. Subscribe today or visit online at timesunion.com.
You want to deport an undocumented person? Start with me, because I'm an undocumented person.
How do we beat him in an election?
We will. I'm going to run against him.
I wish you would. I wish you would, Dad. I would.
There are things in here that are unobjectionable because they're not that effective. So yeah, sure, I'll vote for a distinctive license plate. Sure, why not?
Jim, you had your press conference at 4 o'clock.
You're having a press conference now?
That's
You're
right.
talking?
I'm having a press conference.
Well,
now.
is this your space here or is it public?
No, it's my space.
Oh, this is your
Don't
space.
interrupt.
Okay.
I'm David Lombardo, and this is the Capital Confidential podcast, back from its brief sabbatical from your ears. While we've been off the air, I've been recording interviews for a special series of episodes that we hope to start releasing in the spring. This project is a fun walk down memory lane, and I hope to have more details for you soon. In the meantime, though, we should have more regular episodes every Friday. For our return to normalcy, I spoke with New York Law Journal reporter Dan Clark about the Compensation Committee that recently authorized pay raises for lawmakers, elected statewide officials, and members of the governor's cabinet. We went back into the history of the committee, explored the most controversial elements of their final report, and pontificated about where things might go from here. Shortly after we recorded our conversation on Wednesday, Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie raised serious concerns about the actions taken by the committee and indicated his members wanted legislative action to undo aspects of their report. Enjoy the show.
So Dan, this week we got the official report from the Salary Commission, and it's got pay raises, it's got outside income limitations, it's New York's hottest club. How did we get to this point? Take me back to the beginning, wherever that is. Go.
I mean, it's kind of ironic because they passed this in the budget this year. It's part Triple H for any nerds that want to go through the budget. And
Triple H.
Exactly, Triple H. It created this committee, which is different from a different, that we won't even talk about it, but there's a whole different committee.
The Commission on Executive, Legislative, and Judicial Compensation. We're going to get to that later, Dan.
Well, that's a whole different
tease.
thing. This is like a temporary thing that's basically like, we're going to swoop in here and like deal with this right now instead of 2020 or whenever the other committee is supposed to meet and discuss it. So they held some public hearings last month as required by statute. I believe it was in the budget, so this is mostly unanimously agreed to by the legislature.
Yeah.
Most members, obviously.
Majority members, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, majority members.
What was the expectation of this committee? Was it that it would just look at salaries? I mean, what was your expectation heading in to the meetings and hearings of the committee?
I think everybody's expectation was that it was just going to address their pay.
Right.
And by that, I mean just their base salary pay.
Which is $79,500 set 20 years ago as the part of a deal that Governor Pataki reached with legislative leaders on a whole laundry list of his priorities, whether it was charter schools and some other stuff. And we just haven't seen it addressed ever since then.
Right, and it's actually ironic because the level that they're going to be, the $130,000, is actually about the same level that they were when they got that raise in 1999. If you
adjusted for inflation.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not like totally getting a raise above what they would have, but what they're earning now is definitely not sufficient for a lot of them, they argue. And that's why a lot of them have outside jobs, which we'll get to outside income shortly, I'm sure.
Good tease, Dan.
Yeah.
Good tease. And, the committee that was temporarily created that would last the end of the year was former state comptroller, current state comptroller, former New York City comptroller, current New York City comptroller, and Chief Judge Janet DiFiore, who immediately stepped down, said, you're the law guy here, so you explain to me.
Yeah, it's a very simple thing. So sitting judges, really constitutionally, it can be argued either way.
Okay.
But her argument was that a sitting judge can't serve on this kind of committee that doesn't have a judicial role with it.
Okay.
So her argument was, under the state constitution, I really cannot be in that committee because I could get sued for it. It just wouldn't be statutorily good for me.
But the committee, as it finally came to exist in its final report, they definitely won't be sued. No, definitely.
I'm shocked that nobody has said for sure that they're going to sue yet.
Yeah.
I'm shocked that nobody has come out and said, I am definitely getting a lawyer and I'm definitely going to sue over this.
And the reason we're talking about potential lawsuits at this point is because of what the final report that the committee came out with, which carries the weight of law, because that's how the legislature decided to hand off their power, is they included language limiting outside income, which, was a big surprise considering really people didn't think that was in the purview. And, I guess from hearing the hearing process, the thing that came up was the legislature is supposed to set its own salary, and it's essentially delegated that responsibility. So it seems like there's a whole host of potential problems with what happened.
I mean, there's a lot of constitutional issues with the committee to begin with.
Right.
But when you come to outside income, there's still... I've read the report over and over again, and I still cannot come to a legal justification as to how they could have handled this. Of course, I'm not an attorney, but I will say I've reached out to their attorney, who's Alan Klinger from Strugan, Levon in Manhattan, which is the actual name of the firm.
There will be a test at the end of the episode.
Well, in case anybody else wants to reach out to him, they have not granted me an interview with him. They say it's attorney-client privilege. He can't discuss it, but I have the feeling he's going to have to very publicly discuss it very soon when somebody comes with a lawsuit.
I mean, the report itself argues that they have a holistic approach to compensation, which is why they're considering the outside income as part of their very broad report. And then in terms of the actual raises themselves, first looking just at the legislature, we've touched on this a little bit, but so it's $79,500 now. It's going to go up to $110,000 in less than 3 weeks.
Good raise.
Yeah, if you can get it. $120,000 in 2020, and then $130,000 in 2021. The phased-in raises, the 2020 and 2021, are slightly more complicated in that they are. Is it fair to say tied to passage of a timely budget? Is that a fair way to describe it?
Yeah, and we don't know what the word timely means. Timely is the language that the committee uses, but timely is also the word that Governor Cuomo uses when the budget's 8 days late.
Right.
So does that mean that if the budget's 2 weeks late, that's still going to be timely and they still get the raise?
And the report, makes some broad connections to past examples of how all the budget bills have needed to be passed by April 1, and it's just very murky. And then who decides if it's late? Is it the comptroller? Does he say, I'm not issuing the checks? Is it the governor?
Well, exactly. There's no clear... You don't know. We thought we were going to get these answers with the report that was due Monday, and we didn't get those answers in the report.
Right. But then the other answer the report did give with regards to outside income is that they want to model it as what they keep saying after the congressional limitations. They can only earn 15% of what their base salary is from private employment, and I imagine this is going to be a problem for some members. We've got a realtor, we've got a pharmacist, a home builder, funeral director, and many lawyers.
Yeah.
So what are they going to do?
I mean, the outside income thing is a problem, as we have seen mostly for attorneys. Mm-hmm. We saw it with Sheldon Silver, who got kickbacks from referral services. We saw it with Dean Skelos, that his charges weren't really having to do with him being an attorney. He was just getting his son a job.
Exactly.
But we see that these people do have this outside income, and it comes into conflict with their jobs at certain times. But then there are other members, and everybody's giving the example of John McDonald, where he owns a pharmacy in Cohoes, which is right here in the Capital Region.
Right.
What conflict could that possibly present for him as a legislator? We don't know. And I would suspect, knowing John, that there probably isn't too much of a conflict, and that's why he's so against this ban on outside income so far.
And the way the report is written is that the ban will take effect, not after the next election. It goes into effect January 2020, which means you might have members who are going to have to resign in 2019 if they're not willing to give up their income. And if you're, for example, George Amador, who's making more than I think $300,000 as a home builder, it's a slightly different threshold.
Well, there are options other than resignation. They could divest from their companies.
Okay.
They could put it in a blind trust, much like the president has done with his company. It's something that you don't want to do as a legislator, but...
And just the joke there is, he has not done that. He has not put it in a blind trust.
So, George Amador, for example, he builds homes. I don't know his income off the top of my head, but... it's complicated for somebody like him that wants to keep this business in his family. It's Amador Homes. He doesn't want to get rid of that business.
And the other thing with regards to legislative pay, is the legislative stipends. I believe about 160 of 213 members bring home a stipend, which ranges from $9,000 to $41,500 if you're the leader of a chamber. Those are being drastically curtailed to about 15, and although it's going to be 14 because Liz Kruger already said she's not accepting hers as incoming finance chair.
As she didn't as the ranker either.
Okay, good to know. But she's also independently wealthy, too.
Well, yeah.
But we still give her credit. So is this a big deal that they're getting rid of these? I mean, should people care?
For the lawmakers, maybe it's a big deal. I don't know how many of them really depended on the stipends.
Right.
The stipends are, I would say, average maybe $10,000 depending on the position.
Yeah.
A lot of the chairs pay more than that, especially if you're in a leadership position. Like Jeff Klein, I forget what his title was at one point, but he was in a leadership position that will now longer not be paid. So, and I can see, unlike the outside income, I can see how the legal justification is here.
Oh, yeah.
Because in the law that created this commission, they're tasked with looking at legislative law 5A. 5A deals with all the stipends.
You beat me to it.
I get it. I get that part. The outside income part, I just don't get it.
And I was speaking to one assembly member trying to understand why they might care about this. Because the assembly Democrats, through Speaker Carl Heastie, have been kind of quiet about this, except for their rumblings about the outside income limitations. And so I said, to this member, why, if you're a member who doesn't make any outside income, would you be against this? And they basically said to me, the stipends were a big deal in the sense that they're all equals in the chamber, but that made them, the first among equals. It made them a little more important. And now, if we're all making $130,000, which is more than they were making even with a stipend, then it's not as special. And it's like you got to remember that these are crazy people, and that sometimes their decisions don't make sense, I guess.
Well, there's also, like, with these stipends, we all know that there are some positions that get stipends now that don't really do too much.
Third majority assistant to the whip.
Exactly, yeah.
Carrying person.
They get some money, and maybe that's not good. But then you take people like the chair of the Education Committee that have to talk to the Education Commissioner and the Board of Regents and say, this is what we want out of the budget from them.
Mr. Speaker, this is what we want out of the budget.
Yeah, basically, and then relay that to whoever is chairing Ways and Means.
Right.
So that is more than a job than part-time. And people think that they may deserve a little bit more money because they have to spend more time on that.
Well, and you mentioned part-time, and this is a recurring thing that was brought up by proponents of a raise, including members on the committee, was that these guys are not working part-time. Don't read into the 60-day calendar. It's a full-time job. It's around the clock. So if it is full-time, and how are the leadership people actually working any harder than anyone else? I mean, and does Ways and Means, does Codes, which is going to get a stipend, work any harder than the Agriculture Committee or Judiciary?
I mean, if I was going to compare Codes and the Agriculture Committee, yes, I would probably say that Codes does more.
Bill McGee is the hardest working man in show business, or was.
Yeah, exactly, was. I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm not in the committees. I've never chaired a committee. Okay. But I will tell you that a lot of them get very stressed over this.
Yeah.
Especially, and they will get a stipend, but the finance chair in the Senate, for example, that is like a whole thing. They go through so many hearings. They certainly deserve something a little bit more.
A little something for the effort.
Yeah, at least from their perspective.
A little something. So that's the legislature, and we talked a little about the outside income problem and in regards to the legal challenge. I spoke to committee chair Carl McCall, former state comptroller, and he said, yeah, we're aware that there are some concerns about the legality of the outside income, even though we believe it's legal, the restriction. They're encouraging the legislature to follow action. Senate has said yes. Assembly has not committed. They just have been talking about separation of powers, essentially.
Right.
What do you think ends up happening during the session?
I have no idea.
Good. This has been Dan Clark. Thanks for coming.
Here's the thing. The Senate Democrats have said that they support a ban on outside income. Right. And that's because they don't have as many members as the Assembly majority. So there's less chances for their members to have outside income. Mm-hmm. There are very few Senate Democrats that have outside income. The only one that I can think of off the top of my head is Neil Breslin. Right. He's of counsel at a local law firm in Albany. Yeah. But even then, he doesn't really make too much money at it. If he needed to cap that at $20,000 and he was then going to be paid $130,000, I don't know if he'd complain too much about that.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke with him before the report was even out, and he basically suggested that, he'll just have to curtail his practice, essentially, scale things back to the $18,000 threshold for 2020. Moving to the executive side of things, we also have the salaries for the controller and AG going up $151,000 to $220,000 by 2021. Do you care about that?
I mean, Tish James just got a really big raise.
What was she making as public advocate? Any idea? I don't know.
I believe she was making more than the AG made currently. Okay. Because I remember doing a story. I think she was making $175,000, somewhere in that range. Which is
$4,000 less than the governor currently makes.
Well, yeah, exactly. And the AG currently makes $151,500. So if you're getting a $70,000 raise over 3 years, she's doing pretty good.
Yeah. And I should mention, with regards to the legislature, as soon as that first raise kicks in, they'll become the highest paid legislature in the country. They're currently third. So, we're number one again, guys.
Congrats.
Yeah. And then the governor and lieutenant governor, the committee recommended raises for them. And this is an area where their recommendation doesn't carry the weight of law.
Right.
We're seeing $179 for the governor currently, up to $250 by 2021. A shock to the governor, if you believe the interviews he gave after the committee report. But I was wondering about this. Do you think the legislature is going to act on this? Could you imagine them coming back and being like, yeah, we'd like to vote for a raise for the governor?
I think they will do a joint resolution, like how it was recommended. Right. But I don't know what power they have beyond that to tie something to it. Because unlike the committee cannot say, hey, we're going to raise your pay, but close the LLC loophole. Mm-hmm. The legislature could, in theory, they can do basically anything under state law that they can codify. The legislature could, in theory, do this joint resolution saying we're going to raise this pay, and then make some kind of deal with the governor saying we're going to give you this higher pay, but we also want you to do this and this and this. What those things would be, I don't know, because I don't know whether there's too much conflict with the governor. So I don't know if they really need something to leverage that. And I also don't know if the governor really necessarily cares about making that much more money.
Yeah. I mean, he's got some kids to go put through college, but I think there's some family money.
I think there's some family money, and he doesn't pay rent, so he's doing fine.
I won't shed a tear for him. The other people who are poised to get raises are the members of the governor's cabinet, and this has been kind of the recurring thing that he's focused on for the last couple of years now. He said that in order to attract high-quality talent, he needs to offer a good wage. Pause for a second. Does that mean that everyone who's accepted a cabinet job before is no good?
I don't think that's what he's saying.
Okay.
They might
very dedicated public servants.
Very dedicated. But I will also say we've seen a lot of turnover in his administration, which isn't necessarily very unusual. We don't see it like we see in the president's administration, where it's like one every other week. No. With him, Basil Sego's going after 4 years, somewhere around there. That's not really that unusual.
And what was the highest salary? 136? Is that what the cap was? I think it's for a commissioner.
For the commissioners currently, or what they're going to get? I think you may be right.
And then it's going to be up to 220 in the highest range, right?
They are getting quite a raise.
Yes, they're going to be paid. And right now, there's basically 6 tiers of salaries for commissioners, because apparently not all departments are created equal.
Which I didn't know. I didn't know there were different tiers, but I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. Board of Parole, not as important as Department of Health, apparently.
I guess.
And so they're all split up. They've consolidated those to 4 different tiers. There's set rates for the first 2 tiers, and the 3rd and 4th tier they have ranges that the governor can essentially set. One of the interesting things is how the governor's been trying to get around these statutory limits in the past. So, for example, you've had acting commissioners, because then you can pay them the salary of their underling, essentially, which is higher in some cases. We just saw Carrie Delaney leave OPWDD this week, and she been the acting commissioner for 4 years.
Yeah.
You also have someone like Howard Zucker, who is the commissioner of health, but makes $60,000 as head of the Health Research Incorporation, a quasi-state government entity that's just sort of been the way they pay the Department of Health person to get a good person.
Right.
You think any of this stuff's going to end? When I talked to Carl McCall, he sort of was shrugged his shoulders.
I mean, it's certainly not going to end from the committee's report, and I think it's interesting that they didn't examine that at all.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because maybe we haven't highlighted that in the press, or somebody else hasn't highlighted that in their work in state government, but a lot of people don't know that there are those loopholes to get that higher salary. And if they're getting a public hearing together, they're not hearing about it, I don't know if they necessarily felt compelled to consider that.
And we've talked about outside income limitations. We've talked about these pay raises for the cabinet members. And these were both things that the governor has wanted. And I wrote about this in a midnight rambling blog that incorporated the talking heads. And I think he comes out as the winner of all this. He gets everything he wanted. In 2016, we saw a pay commission get scuttled when the legislature wouldn't yield to his demands on outside income. And fast forward 2 years later, he gets everything he wants. Do you agree with that, Dan?
Yeah, because it doesn't affect him whether they get outside income or not. He doesn't get any outside income other than $700,000 from a book deal.
No restrictions for him on the book deal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But he can't take another job. Like, he can't be of counsel at a law firm. So if the legislature can't either, he's kind of like, well, sucks for you. This is my situation. And he wanted the committee to begin with, though I will say he will only be the winner if there's not litigation against this and if it's not struck down.
And if there is litigation, are they able to strike down part of the law, part of the report? Or is this all one big package deal where if you strike down the outside income limitations, bye-bye pay raises as well?
Oh, no. Law is very flexible.
Yeah.
A judge can say in a decision, much like we saw with Daily Fantasy Sports, a judge can say in a decision, this part of this is unconstitutional, the rest you're fine with.
Okay.
But this part, I'm going to scrap this.
Okay. Fair enough. What else? Anything else you're watching with the compensation report?
Not really, to be honest with you. I'm just following the language on the outside income. It's just very the way that they're using to justify it is basically they're saying there's a line in their enacting statute that says they can take into consideration all factors.
Right.
But that doesn't say we can apply our judgment to all factors. So I'm really curious to see how they play out that language, because we're going to see it in court filings when somebody challenges this.
Right. Oh, and we forgot to mention the governor now, if there is an action on the joint resolution, will become the highest paid governor as well.
Congrats.
Dan, I think this has been perfect. I appreciate all your time and energy, and people can read you in the New York Law Journal. They should probably subscribe if they want to get past the paywalls, right?
No, you get 5 free articles a month.
5 free articles a month.
And if you're going to read more than that by me, you might want to read something else, because I'm very dry sometimes.
Okay, and they can also find you on Twitter at Dan Clark Reports. Dan, I really appreciate you taking your time and walking me through the compensation issue.
Thanks for having me.
Just heard I tried to get you.
Ah! This day sucks!